The investigation into Russia's meddling in the U.S. election will be center stage Monday on Capitol Hill. FBI Director James Comey will testify in front of the House Intelligence Committee. Comey is expected to be questioned on whether the FBI is indeed investigating the Trump campaign aides for any ties to Russia. He'll also be grilled about President Trump's claim that former President Obama wiretapped Trump Tower during the election. For more on what we can expect at the hearing is Michael O'Hanlon. He's a co-director of the Brookings Center for 21st Century Security and Intelligence. Michael, Director Comey has already briefed the Senate Judiciary Committee on Russia. He's set to testify publicly for the first time. What do you think we might learn from this?
Boy, it's a big question, because there are all sorts of things that are possible here. And I don't think it's very likely that there was actual collusion between the Trump campaign and Russians about trying to influence the election. But that's certainly something that has to be looked at in any comprehensive examination. More likely is going to be, as you mentioned towards the end, the question of what kind of improper contacts might have occurred that are well short of any kind of, actual plot to sway the election between the Trump campaign and the Russians, but still could violate law or certainly violate proper American preference that its own elections be handled by its own citizens rather than foreign influencers or agents. So I think knowing exactly which conversations happened when, and also explaining, as you were getting at on the whole wiretapping saga, explaining what authorities would have been used to learn these things, and therefore explaining why they were legal, normal, and not the result of any wiretapping plan by the Obama administration. It seems pretty clear that that's the strong consensus across the intelligence community and the, both sides of the aisle in Congress, that President Obama did nothing improper. So I think explaining that issue, what kinds of intelligence were available without any kind of special warrants or without any kind of violations of the law, and therefore, what do we know based on just normal procedure?
Michael, why is it that we can't really get a straight answer on whether the FBI is in fact investigating Trump ties to Russia?
I think that the FBI is uncomfortable talking about investigations before they know what they want to say about them, before they know what they've learned. And just the very words you chose, which were, I think, carefully and well chosen, but those kinds of words imply a presumption of a potential guilt of something pretty nefarious. So even using that kind of language, I think, makes people nervous. But having said that, I still felt the intelligence community made a mistake last fall when, in the transition period, they first announced that they had found this evidence of Russian involvement in our elections, a Russian attempt to sway the outcome. And I thought the intelligence community really should have clarified that they had no reason to think that that had decisively influenced the outcome of the election. Because, as you know, what happened when they gave their briefing materials is that different people interpreted this in different ways, and some made the suggestion that perhaps it had influenced the outcome and really turned the tables for Trump. And I think the intelligence community sort of played into that potential. It wasn't the intelligence community's intention or fault, but it played into that political firestorm. So I actually, even though I understand why the FBI is going to be skittish about talking about an ongoing investigation, I think they probably should say we have no reason to think that what Russia did affected the outcome, even though we are concerned there may have been things Russia did that were improper.
So many questions to this one. I'm looking forward to his testimony, Comey's testimony next week. I want to ask you, though, Michael, about Secretary of State Rex Tillerson's trip to Asia. He said this week that military force against North Korea is an option and rejected talks over its nuclear program. I want to play a little bit of what he had to say at a press conference with China's foreign minister.
We share a common view and a sense that tensions on the peninsula are quite high right now, and that things have reached a rather dangerous level. And we've committed ourselves to do everything we can to prevent any type of conflict from breaking out. And we view there are a number of steps that we can take that are in front of us. And Foreign Minister Wang has agreed that we will work together to see if we cannot bring the government in Pyongyang to a place where they want to make a different course, make a course correction, and move away from their development of their nuclear weapons.
Can you tell if the Trump administration's approach to North Korea is any different from President Obama's?
Well, That's a good question. I think that generally speaking, the answer is no, based on everything we've seen since Secretary Mattis first went to the region in the days after he had been confirmed back in late January. And you saw a reaffirmation of the U.S.-Korea alliance. You saw a sustainment of the plan to deploy missile defense, the so-called THAAD system that's made China unhappy, but I think we need to deal with North Korea. We saw now Tillerson going and telling the Chinese we're going to have to take this threat very seriously. And the one thing that's on the table that's a little different is this fairly vague suggestion of possible use of military force, going back to Donald Trump's tweet when he said that the North Korean missile test wasn't going to happen back a couple months ago. And then more recently, Secretary Tillerson's comment that all options are on the table. And what I think he means is that, of course, if North Korea became threatening or started to use force itself, that we could, of course, ourselves retaliate. I don't think he's talking about American preemption, but he leaves a little bit of vagueness and uncertainty with the choice of language. And as you know, preemption is something we associate more with President Bush than with President Obama. So that could be a potential difference. We're going to have to wait and see how it's clarified in the coming weeks.
And we know President Obama told President Trump now at the time that this North Korea is one of these huge threats in the global sphere of influence that we need to keep an eye on. Michael O'Hanlon, I want to thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you.